Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us here today at this exclusive event for the school educators in our home state of Rajasthan. Before we start, I'd like to request all of you to please keep your microphones on mute. My name is Monisha Tandon, and I will be your host for today. And on behalf of NIIT University, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to each one of you who are part of the large, esteemed educator community of our home state of Rajasthan. Gathered here today are principals and teachers from over 100 schools all across our home state. We also have with us senior academicians and leadership from NIIT University, and also some NU students who we lovingly call Newtons. Now, these Newtons are especially thrilled to be here today since some of them, in fact, I think all of them are actually alumni of your schools. We have some representation from Mahavir Public School, Step by Step, Modern, Maheshwari, MDVM Pale, Global School, etc., just to name a few. Just to give you a brief intro about NIIT University, NU is a not-for-profit, UGC-approved university notified by the government of Rajasthan in 2009. The university inherits more than 3 decades of rich expertise of the NIIT group. Nurtured by some of the foremost thought leaders and corporate practitioners of the country, this multidisciplinary university focuses on emerging areas of technology and management. It's located in a 100-acre campus at Neemrana, nestled in the Aravali Hills, and the fully residential green campus offers a vibrant environment for pursuing higher education and research. In fact, for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit our campus, we'd like to put up a quick, brief virtual tour of the NIT University campus for all of you. Thank you, Ashu. And all I can say that next time we would really look forward to having this conversation with all of you in person at the NU campus very, very shortly. So the event today promises to be an enriching conversation between our audience and our panelists. To make this discussion more engaging and in the interest of time, we've taken questions from the audience in advance. Since some questions are common, I've clubbed them for the benefit of our panelists who are requested to keep their answers brief so that we can take additional questions if time permits. Meanwhile, I'm requesting the audience to send in any questions that they may have additionally in the chat box on the right side of the screen, and we'll attempt to address those in the open round of the session. So the session today is titled Innovations in Digital Learning, the NEP Perspective. Our panelists need no introduction. We have with us here today Lieutenant General Retired Surendra Kulkarni, Director, Mayo College, Ajmer; Mr. Sanjay Datta, Principal, Maharana Mewar Public School, Udaipur; Professor Parimal Manke, Acting President, NIIT University; Major General A.K. Singh, Chief Operations Officer and Dean Student Affairs, NIIT University; and of course, Mr. R.S. Pawar, Founder, NIIT University; and Mr. Vijay Thadani, Co-Founder, NIIT University. Any discussion on NEP 2020 is incomplete without one prominent name. And so also joining us in this event will be Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan, the author of NEP 2020, former Chief ISRO, and who also happens to be the current chairperson of NIIT University. With this, I'd like to invite Mr. Pawar, Founder NU, Chairman NIIT Limited, for his opening comments. Welcome, sir. Sir, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. This is I'm told is the most common sentence of the year is please unmute yourself. So I did it to myself. But anyway, thanks to a very hearty welcome and a big thank you to all of you to find time on a Saturday, and also to our panelists, General Kulkarni and Mr. Datta. And shortly, we'll also have Dr. Kasturi Rangan. So in this short welcome talk, I thought I'll give you a little background, because all of you are from Rajasthan, which is the home state of the university. And it may be in order to say why and how did this Nibrana decision come about. So I have to go back to 2004, when the then Chief Minister constituted a team of people from all walks of life to look at the economic development of Rajasthan. And in that, there were a number of us, and then there were different groups, and there was one group which was the knowledge economy group, and that was chaired by Dr. Kasturi Rangan, and I was a very active member in that group. So we had done a lot of thinking about how should the state of Rajasthan look at its economic development, during which I had proposed the idea that the highway from Delhi to Jaipur, the NH8, halfway is Nibrana, and we said from Nibrana to Jaipur will be the economic powerhouse of the future, because this has been seen in many parts of the world, whether it's the US or Europe or Japan, that when there are two cities which are about a couple of 100 kilometers apart, if they have a good highway, then a lot of development happens on that highway. So we had proposed the idea in 2005 or so of the knowledge corridor from the beginning of Rajasthan on NH8 all the way to Jaipur. So that was presented to all the officers and the ministers, at which time the CM very smartly said, okay, what is NIIT going to do? Now, it just happened that we were thinking of that time, the companies, as you know, old now, 40 years old, but the university idea was recent. And we were thinking about a university by the end of the 1990s, but we had thought of other places. So when this request came, we said, well, we'll do something in Nibrana. So that's how the choice of Nibrana happened, and turns out to be have been a very good decision, because it's not in the city, yet it's only an hour and a half away from Delhi airport. So Dr. Kasturi Rangan's connection with us goes back even earlier, but this was a very intense interaction for those 5 years. And the next time again, 2014 to 19, again, I was actively involved. So the connection with the state has been very deep and old. And so we really are delighted that this time around, Monisha correctly decided that our first conversation with all of you from the school system should be with Rajasthan. And we may not get Dr. Kasturi Rangan for subsequent meeting, but for this one, we did want him to come because it just so happened, and we are blessed that he is the author of the new economic policy. And in this policy, which he will, and I'll be talking to him at that time, there are many, many dimensions which the NIT University, or NU as we call it, NU has believed in those ideas from inception. And I'll touch on one or two of them. And therefore, we find that the policy is very vast. It touches right from preschool all the way to PhD, and our focus in the conversation is only around post-school today. But the aspect that is of great interest to all of you. And while the questions could be around issues of interest to you, but I thought the focus should be perhaps on the higher classes coming into university. So technology has been our preoccupation since the NIT, the company, was formed in 1981, which will be 40 years later this year. And the university was created in 2009. The idea was, in a sense, being worked on for almost 10 years, but location crystallized only in 2005. We started building in 2006, 2009 was the first intake. So if and when you take a closer look at the university, and some of you are quite involved, you will notice that we emphasized right in the beginning that to build a great university will take decades. And you have to build many dimensions of a great university. So it's important to choose a few dimensions at the starting point and excel in them. And then over 10, 15 years, add one or two more dimensions and add another 2 dimensions, because it takes decades to build a good university. So we chose 4 things, and we call them 4 core principles. And we said in 4 dimensions, the university has to become famous all over the world in the first 10, 15, 20 years. Now, these 4 core principles, I'll touch on them, but I talk only about the 1 or 2 which are relevant for today's discussion. The first of them is that it should be linked to the needs of industry, society, whoever are there, places where the students go to. So industry linked, society linked, the first core principle. That means education should be relevant to the places where our students go. That's a starting point. That's the most important point, because the criticism of higher education is that it doesn't really face the employer community. And therefore, employers find there's a big gap between what they want and what is produced. So that's the first core principle. And we have many, many things we do, but that's not for discussion today. The second one is important, and that is technology-based. Now, technology comes to NIT naturally, because 40 years ago we started on it. And so every aspect of education operations over the last 40 years, we have experimented, researched, documented, and so on and so forth. In fact, the education technology area has been with us for too long. So when the university was being born, NIT put its research lab into the university. That was the first big gift. And that lab was earlier located in my alma mater, which is Rani and myself, which is IIT Delhi. So the lab had been there for almost 10 years. And we moved that lab, and one of the big areas was educational technology. So technology as a core principle is there in the DNA, in the starting point. And while technology has become prominent after COVID, I just want to say that we've been doing all these things in one way for 40 years, but more importantly, for the last 12 years at the university. The third core principle is research. Again, not to be touched too much, but NEP is very strong on it. So let me just tell you that from first year itself, students are doing research projects. We expect them to publish. And since this startup phenomena is new, we want them to think of their ideas as soon as they come in, because they do come with dreams from school. They do come with unrealized dreams. So our idea is how to get them to convert their dreams into some kind of reality through research, then through the lab, through the clubs, and then use technology and then make it possible. The fourth core principle, which probably will stay with us the longest as work in progress, is seamless. So seamlessness is not just across subjects. That's the easy one to do. That universities have been doing for years now. Seamless across all divides in society. So man and nature as the first divide. And you saw in the video that we got very busy even before the first students came in building our environment, in rebuilding the forest which was in the hillock behind us. It's called Kali Pahadi. We want to make it Hari Pahadi in the first 20, 25 years. So man and nature. Then there are villages around us. It's mandatory for a student to go and teach the students in the government colleges. Then there's industry around us. So all these divides which are artificial and man-made, seamlessness is the principle says we have to join up all the divides. So among these core principles, of course, the key one is technology and research. And NEP gives a very heavy emphasis on both. And when I'm in conversation with Dr. Kasturi Rangan, I'll try and draw him out on that. Now, education technology, by the way, is also a discipline in the university. And we have one of our senior most professors, Vijay Manke, who leads a team. And we have a recent addition also of PhD who's come from IIT Bombay in that area. We've turned out PhDs. We have a number of PhDs on rolls, more than 30. MTech students in ET have passed out, of which 15, by the way, have been school teachers, of which 2 went abroad to do their PhD in education. So both the education and the technology side are areas of great interest because we believe that there's a huge need and opportunity to create new ideas in that space. So our students get the benefit of the thinking that we do. And so for us, actually, COVID was a very welcome change because while the world struggled, and the world has struggled, and let me say the world is continuing to struggle, we were fortunate that we've been doing right from the admission process, which has been done online for the last 10 years, through to delivery, which is a blend, through to the placement process, which is done online. And then students have to do 6-month internship wherever they go, and faculty is online counseling them. So for us, it has been a way of life. And we have learned something which people are still to learn, that technology is not a panacea. Jumping into technology without thinking twice costs you more harm. I've also had the occasion to be on the board of the school where I studied, which is the Scindia School. 20 years or 25 years ago, we started using technology. And like some of the good schools who are on the panel as well, we've learned the hard way that finding the right blend of high tech with high touch, which is the role of the teacher, is not an easy question. And people are struggling right now, and hopefully all will benefit from this forced situation. But I have to say that we've been fortunate, and I'm sure Dr. Mrs. Manke, who's the current Vice Chancellor, she will talk to that. So technology's got a good fillip, but technology is a double-edged sword. And I hope that we'll touch upon some of those points because technology is important, as we say in the NEP, but technology is not an end-all be-all. So with those few opening comments, I'm going to go back to Monisha to see if she can start the panel discussion. And I will be then back when Dr. Kasturi Rangan joins us. So over to you, Monisha.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. And with this, I'd like to initiate our conversation with our panel members. I'm just requesting all our 4 panel members to kindly be on video and unmute themselves. Great. So like I did mention that we've been receiving a lot of questions from the audience, and in the interest of time, I'll section them and direct them to all of you so that we can have a very engaging conversation. My only request to you is keep your answers brief so that we can take in as many questions as we can. And with that, Parimal ma'am, I think the big excitement, I think, and the question on everybody's mind, especially in today's audience, is that what's the role of digital learning in NEP?
Thank you, Monisha. In fact, the new education policy envisages a very important role for online and digital education. They have devoted a full section on this, and where they emphatically mention that the advantages of the digital education must be reaped while also mitigating the downside of it. And then the NEP goes on to making recommendations. And the very first that they talk about for mitigating the downside is about the really the infrastructure, digital infrastructure. And they talk about digital divide. And then they go on to make important recommendations which are covering all aspects of learning. So the new education policy talks about the online teaching platform and tools, the content creation, virtual labs, online assessments, developing standards for online learning. And they talk about learner-centric pedagogy. And I think that is a very key word. And therefore, they give a lot of importance to training of teachers for following the learner-centric pedagogy in in digital education. They also recommend blended model. So, there is a certain balanced view and not going overboard or gaga for online learning, because all of us know that the limitations of that also, and therefore I'm sure the educators are more or less unanimous about the blended model. So the NEP talks about blended model, and interesting that they say that one should undertake pilot studies. And I think that's a very important recommendation that has been made, that we should go for pilot studies so that we have a researched view about how the digital learning works, and then we can keep improving on it. So all in all, I think the new education policy has placed the online and digital education in its due place. Thank you, Monisha.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. Thanks a lot for your answer. And I'll, the next question, in fact, Mr. Datta, we've been asked that how can we rely on digital learning to bring about some sort of enhancement in the intrapersonal skills of young learners in school, especially during their formative years?
Okay. The very first thing that comes to mind when you talk about how digitally children learn is through collaboration. The very platforms on which they are working today are bringing them out of their isolated and one-to-many model, where they are forced to collaborate. The teacher is at the center of that spoke and wheel arrangement. But then if you look at whichever way you may have gone, G Suite or through Office 365, you would see that the classroom teaching itself has been transformed into something that is requiring special skills, intrapersonal as well as interpersonal. So I would say that the classrooms in a controlled environment have broken out, and it's no more just a pre-prepared lecture that is being given. It is something which is work in progress. So while the teacher is delivering the lesson, there could be projects, the children are at it. So they are working, they are collaborating, and that is where the interpersonal skills come to fore. Because if you are doing project-based learning, you cannot do it in isolation. And not only that, when you give a device to a child, I mean, there's something that I remember being said about mobiles being kept out of school. So once we kicked the mobile out of the school, and today the school runs on a mobile. So you cannot ignore the fact that children have a device for a purpose, but they will use it for more than that. So, I mean, the two people that come to my mind right now is Greta Thunberg. And then you have somebody called Dana, a social media influencer from Pakistan. And you look at the spectrum and you see one who has used this platform for a global issue, which started from her protesting outside the parliament and reaching the highest echelons of power. And then there is someone who in a very light mood says this is something like this, ये हमारी car है और हमारी ये हम है और ये पारी हो रही है. Now imagine these two broad ends of the spectrums by 19-year-olds. They are both influencers. They are using the internet and social media platforms for both education and fun. And you cannot control, we are not living in a totalitarian state where you can control what children do with the net at their disposal. So learning is collaborative. The learning is, my take is learning is collaborative. It is something that is work in progress that happens live. It is live cooking right in front of you. Children are collaborating with teachers. They are making the material right there. And all projects that they work on essentially are collaborative. So I think the interpersonal skills and the intrapersonal skills, I mean, just imagine who would have thought of something called SELs. There are socio-emotional learning platforms available now, where a kid can see what his or her triggers are and what inspires them and what does not, what interests them and they cannot. And there are setups for professional speaking, where a kid can have an auditorium kind of setting where one would talk one to many, or they would get into something like a group discussion where they learn how to encourage others to speak, bring them in, how to start a conversation, how to stop. Something that you only learned at the stage of a GD, probably when you were going. General Kulkarni will agree with me that the GD played a very important role in our lives when we were trying to get into NDA or IMA. And you were forever asking what would be the best thing to do. Now you have a software which is preparing you for that and gives you a feedback whether you are socially acceptable or not, and what are the areas that you need to work upon. So I think the intrapersonal skills and the interpersonal skills, the collaborative skills, all are greatly enhanced by the digital platforms that are available today and are an essential part of our learning. That's my opening take. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. And of course, you said a lot of things that ring a bell. Thank you for your answer. But now just carrying on from here, General Kulkarni, according to you, how do you think is, how helpful is the digital learning as compared to analog learning? I think this is also a question on a lot of people. It's been on their mind. So
a lot of online learning. So the question is, what is relevant for a particular task? If you have to change a light bulb, no amount of digital stuff will help you. It can tell you what it is about, but you have to go and do it yourself. So there are some things which can only remain analog in the world. But I want to take, in my opening remarks, take you back to a phenomenon that happened about 15 years ago. In my own school, our predecessors put down an optical fiber cable ring with the idea of making this all Wi-Fi campus in time to come, right? But around that time, between 2005 and 2008, see what all happened. YouTube was launched in 2005. We had this global crisis around 2008, economic crisis, which threw up things like Uber and other Airbnb, etc. The smartphone came around that time. So therefore, what happened was that whereas earlier you moved from physical to physical, then if from physical, from one position you could connect many people. Now you can connect anything from anywhere. So people, places, and things today can be connected freely. Now, if you put this into context, you will then understand that where do we wish to rely on technology. I'll give an example. In my school, I introduced laptops at the lowest class that we have in grade 4, for grade 4, 5, and 6. And people ask me, why not from the top? I said, the guys at the top need it for a college admission, application, and all that, no problem. But if responsible use of technology and what it has to offer is exposed to these young children, so that they know when to rely on this gadget and when to do the things physically, whether it is collaborative, whether it's experiential, whichever way. And I am kind of happy to report that this is working well. And the pandemic has made the children even more responsible. to realize that living off the gadget has affected them socially to an enormous degree. In Rajasthan, as you're aware, classes 6 to 12 are now allowed to come. Keeping quarantine rules in mind, I can only take so many at a time, but I am being flooded with requests from parents and a very high percentage of younger children who are desperate to get back to school. I think the answer lies there, that on each situation, you have to balance out which is more relevant, the technology side or the hands-on side. No one size fit all answers would ever be correct. Thank you.
Thank you, General Saab. That was very insightful. And, I think that immediately takes me into something where, of course, we have AK with us here. And AK, you're head of student affairs in a residential university. So when we talk about digital learning, what do you think is your opinion about how it can be blended with experiential and activity-based learning and student development activities outside the classroom in a digital mode?
Thank you, Monisha. As Mr. Pawar said, the environment and the community that we have around us, that's a big advantage of being at this place. So what we have done for anything that happens outside the class, we have created a structure called activity-oriented course. And these are the ones where students are actually working very hard, devoting their time, but we are not getting any credits. So these have been, all such activities outside the class have been converted into credits in which they can take part and get credits for that, which is part of their curriculum. So in this, we leverage their technical skills for doing a lot of things in the community and in the environment around us. Some of the examples that I can give immediately is the students themselves realize the problem of going out of the campus and coming into the campus, that is a gate pass system. It was cumbersome. So we formed a team of students, all right, you find a solution to the problem that we're facing. So the new gate pass system that has been created is totally developed by the students. Similarly, there are a lot of problem in reporting about food in the mess. By the time they wrote on a register and register went to somebody, more than 24 hours were over. So another body of students created a mess management system in which there is instantaneous reporting of anything that is wrong. And that enables us to take remedial measures without loss of any time. And in the Community Connect program, we have something called Each One Teach One program, where the students take up one child of the schools around us. We have 5 schools visiting now, and we are now broadening out to 3 more schools, where the students, of course, are not endowed with this digital platform and technology that is in vogue today. So that introduction at that level, at that grassroots level, through our students' innovative ideas is taking place. And finally, for the larger community of Neemrana, they have embarked on a project called Solid Waste Management. And in that, specifically, the initial part is plastic waste management. So this is how the digital knowledge that the students have is being leveraged for improvement of the society and the environment around us.
So that's wonderful. I think that gives a lot of us and I think schools who are part of the audience today that the true power actually rests in the students and being able to give them a position of power and enable them. I think that that is a very, very smart thing to do. Thank you for your answer. But, we're getting a lot of questions, and Sanjay sir, my next one is going to be directed to you. We're getting a lot of questions, I think, from schools about how can we make digital learning an innovative tool for especially skill-based education. So a lot of people would like to know how can that become more effective.
Monisha, when NSDC was first set up and the National Skills Mission came into being, it was thought that this was more for technical education and for college and university learning. But if you look at the new education policy, you would realize that now skills are something that is being talked about right from maybe the pre-primary or primary level. And when I say that on the basis of the fact that you expect children to do coding. Now that is something that we used to hear about. I mean, NIT would understand this better, that, I mean, you've been around since what, 1981, I guess? And you were at the edge of the technological revolution back then in time when computers was the first heard thing. And it was considered as something which required great skill. There was something that required great training to become a programmer. But today you expect children to make their own programs in primary schools. The blockchains are being used and talked about. AI is being talked about. So definitely the skills is something that would be brought down. There'll be a 10-day internship which is being proposed in the middle school. Now imagine children going and learning about jobs in their middle school so that they can decide about their careers in the later part after 10th, which is considered to be, you know, the class where they're practically decided about where they want to go in life, something you never did till you reached class 12th earlier, or maybe, you know, college. So skills is something that, and not only just these skills to get a job, the soft skills, the interpersonal skills that we talked about earlier, is something again that is now being blended into our teaching process. So what my take is that skills is something that comes with practice. So now adaptive learning tools that are there, the design of courses and the curriculum would definitely have some, because you're going to go for competency-based learning. And the assessment is also going to be based on the competencies rather than the body of knowledge that you've been able to mug up. So rote learning is practically dead there. It is demonstrate what you can demonstrate, what you can learn, and what you can adapt. So for that, I think the adaptive learning platforms are the greatest tool that are going to be there. The adaptive testing is also going to be there because they are, I mean, it's no more a question of getting one question paper and 3 hours. It is something you're supposed to demonstrate a skill. So you are also supposed to learn it in different ways, because not everybody learns the same way and not everybody achieves the same level of competency. So there's no point in saying that you were supposed to learn a skill and you have learned 60% of it. I mean, you mark a kid, what happens after that? Unless the kid can perform the task till the end point, there is no point in teaching, there is no point in learning. So there has to be more than one trajectory of learning, the ability to go back, find out which skill, which step in the skill has been missed. The student, the platforms will take them back there. They will see, okay, this is where the learner is making a mistake over and over again. So, okay, hasn't learned in way X, let's try it in the Y manner. So that is how I think teaching and learning is going to progress in future. Your competency-based learning that we are talking about, the skills development that we are talking about would both be done through adaptive learning measures. And there are platforms, and I'm glad that the government has taken an initiative, because please understand that this revolution did not exactly start with the NEP, it was already there. The good part about NEP is that it has responded very well. I mean, if you look at the NEP, let's say page number 58, which came to us in the first draft, and if you look at this one, they already incorporated the word pandemic in it, while the original policy was made before that. So this is a very, very responsive document. The Diksha app itself was talking about infrastructure being in place. The SWAYAM portal, I mean, just see what SWAYAM stands for, study web of active learning for young aspiring minds. I mean, they are making it institutionalized now. So these are living documents, these policies are living policy, and I'm sure that it is not only just talking about demonstrative skills as far as a task is concerned, but also about interpersonal and soft skills between us. So Manisha, I feel that that is the way forward with the new education policy. It is going to be interactive, it is going to be multifarious ways of learning, leaving it at some point, coming back, getting your roadblocks out, and then carrying on forward till everybody reaches there. So the adage of saying, you know, no one gets left behind truly comes into force here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sanjay sir. And we have Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who's joined us right now. Welcome to the discussion, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And just just to introduce her, the conversation right now is kind of really picking up with a lot of engaging and exchange of thoughts. And we have with us four panelists. We have Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni, who's Director, Mayo College, Ajmer. We have Mr. Sanjay Datta, who's Principal, Maharana Mewar Public School, Udaipur. We have Professor Parimal Manke, who's the Acting President at NIT University. And we have Major General A.K. Singh, who is the Chief Operations Officer and Dean Student Affairs at NIT University. And Mr. Pawar, I think it's best that you introduce the most prominent name that's associated with NEP. And for all our audience, we'll look forward to this conversation.
Great. So I've been listening very carefully to what General Kulkarni and Sanjay and Parimal and AK have said on this very important topic. And so we are just bringing in Dr. Angan at a very critical moment in this session, and post that we'll be continuing the panel. So for all of you who've joined us, and Dr. Kasturi Rangan, there are more than 100 people. We decided, I gave them a little background to our 2004 Knowledge Committee in the Rajasthan state government, where you were chairing it, and we talked about this knowledge corridor idea, and I gave them a little history of how NU landed up in Neemrana. And I also told them, of course, that we are delighted and very, very privileged to have you as our Chancellor for this term. And you know that Dr. Karan Singh was with us for 2 terms, so I think the philosophical foundations were laid very well. And now with you as our mentor, we want to build on top of that in terms of a scientific mindset and, of course, holistic learning. So for the benefit of all of you, and since you've read the policy or some abstracts or some aspects of the policy and therefore seen a bit of the spirit behind it, let me only say that all of us who've been involved in education have been actually blown away by the breadth and the depth of the thought that Dr. Kasturi Rangan managed to generate within a very large team in his very typical consultative way. I've seen that at work in the past, having worked on some projects with him. Deep and wide consultation and very deep scientific thinking. And scientific, I don't mean science, but logical, detailed, thorough, going to the roots of education. And there are many dramatic suggestions and comments. And today we'll not try and cover all of them because that's too vast. So we are going to focus our conversation very briefly. I have just a few questions. We have very little time with him around this topic, which is innovations in digital learning, the NEP perspective. And so therefore, there's 95% of the things we won't touch on what he and the team have put together, but we'll just touch on this. And so Dr. Rangan, I basically am going to touch only on 3, and I'll put the questions one by one. The very first one where I want you to respond for a few minutes will be around the all-round development of the child, holistic learning, and NEP's take on that will be the first question. The second, I want to continue from there and talk about a great need which all educations have felt, but felt constrained, that a child evolves. And I'm not going right from childhood, but even when they come to us in the first year, as first-year students, they're at a very interesting juncture in life where they're trying to understand who they are and their personality and what they need and what they want, and the drastic changes happen. So during this period of the undergrad, which is 4 years, their views of the world change dramatically. And we've seen that, they get stuck into a path and they have to come out at the end of the path with no flexibility. So the role of flexibility in the policy and the guidelines on flexibility in the policy is the second point I want you to touch upon. And the third point I want you to touch upon is the centrality of technology in all of this. So let me just say, first of all, on the question of making learning holistic, making learning relevant, making learning meaningful. So what has been the philosophy and what are some of the principles around holistic learning that the NEP talks about?
First of all, let me thank you and the organizers, Rajiv, for this opportunity of interacting with you on this morning. I do know you organized a very important session for the benefit of the Rajasthan schools. And of course, you playing a central role in this kind of a thing brings tremendous impact because you are one of the few people who have read through the. I am aware that the policy has been read through in its original version for more than 400 pages by you. You have really assimilated the entire thing, had very interesting and fruitful comments, and we have exchanged also several opinions in the context not only of the formulation stage, but also subsequently as a part of discussions that we had. So it's really a very, I look forward to this discussion. I was very happy that you invited me to join this in the morning, even though because of my own constraints, we'll spend not very much time in the morning now, but I think good enough for responding to the type of questions you have, three of them. On the holistic development of learners, this is one of the things, it's actually, there is a centrality about this in the whole policy. It's not only with respect to school education, college education, or anything. There is a centrality regarding the holistic development, the all-rounded aspect of how do you develop them. And the key thrust in our the policy is of the curriculum and pedagogy reform across all stages. This is one of the important things to move the education system towards a real understanding and learning, how to learn, and away from the culture of rote learning from the present. This is one of the things that we have emphasized it very much in the school education, but it does move to the higher education in some form. The goal will be to create a holistic and well-rounded individuals equipped with the 21st century skills, and all aspects of curriculum and pedagogy will be reoriented and revamped. This has to be done if we have to achieve this. Now, what does this mean? First, of course, the curriculum content will be reduced in each subject to its core essential. There is going to be a lot of, in fact, this is one of the things that the national curricular framework has to really work on initially to get the broad frame. This is under now initiation by the government. So it's likely that this work will go. The once the curricular framework is there, then one can see that it will take due cognizance of the critical thinking and more holistic, discovery-based, discussion-based, analysis-based learning. This will be the central approach to this. The mandated content will be the key concepts, ideas, applications, and problem solving. Teaching and learning will try to be conducted in a more interactive manner. This is an extremely important component of the whole process. Questions will be encouraged and classroom sessions will regularly contain more fun, creative, collaborative, and explorative activities for children for deeper and more experiential learning. I can only add to this that we'll have subjects beside the normal thing that we understand, the flexibility and choice that we need to bring in, even in the secondary school education, particularly on physical education, arts and vocational crafts is one of the aspects we want to bring in the totality. They may be free to design your own pathway to study and apply life plans. The holistic development here, one of the new distinguishing feature is the fact that we don't want to have any hard separation between curricular, extracurricular, co-curricular, or among arts and sciences, or between humanities, vocational and academic, and so on and so forth. So there is going to be an integrated way in which the student will be exposed to the knowledge base in the secondary education level. And the such subject, as I mentioned, of physical education, arts, and vocational crafts will, in addition to science, humanities, and mathematics, will be seriously incorporated throughout the school curriculum with a consideration of what is interesting and safe at each stage. So this is broadly the framework. We have certainly gone into the details of what is the staging in which we do this, the 5 years of foundational thing, 3 years of preparatory thing, 3 years of middle school thing, 4 years of secondary. And this is all developmentally appropriate in trying to define the framework in terms of the curriculum as well as the pedagogy. So this is going to be a challenge, not that's going to be this being still written, it's being crafted very carefully. Unless the curricular framework comes in, of course, the teachers are asking, how do we go ahead with the curriculum and pedagogy? I'm sure that the original version of the policy is sufficiently detailed to get a glimpse of how you can proceed, even as you get your curricular framework and so on. So using this opportunity of the forum that you have created here, Raji, I would like to say let us start the work on this in the way in which we have envisaged the part. There are no secrets here which can be unraveled further by means of the curricular framework and so on. And I think the veteran teachers, they know precisely once you have got a policy how to translate it into a pedagogy. So I think the entire thing is open now, and I'm sure that today's discussion and later you will keep this duly in the mind without unnecessary, because there are too many questions being asked. When is the curriculum framework going to come? When are we going to have a new curriculum? When are we going to have? I think there are schools which already started it. I want to say the other day I was talking to Bharatiya Vidyabhavan School, School of Screen. They said we can go ahead with it. The teachers already found a way to do this. So I'm sure that with your vision here and locally, you should be able to guide them also as to how to move on this. Thank
so
you.
as you know, and you visited us a number of times, we feel delighted that we've been doing many of these things a little quietly as well. So for example, if a student, since we are residential, students do a lot of things and we know what they're doing. So let's say the first time I saw a play put up by these engineering students, I was amazed. So I asked we have some 21 clubs. So the drama club, the faculty in charge, I said, how many hours would they have spent? So they said, well, each of them has spent maybe 60 or 70 hours. So I said, how much do they spend for a course in a semester? They said maybe 45. So I said, if they worked harder on this than on that course in maths or programming, and this is relevant and important for making them effective, then why should we not be giving them credits for this? So then our Vice Chancellor promptly worked through the Academic Council and we introduced the idea of activity-oriented courses. So all the qualities we want to build in people, when they do events like the TEDx event, there's a team that works very hard. They earn credits for working there. There's managerial skill involved. So we're trying to bring in these into the rigid structure. Also, our undergrads, 1/3 of their courses they choose, 1/3. In the beginning, it's common. And then as they uncover their own interests, up to 1/3 of the course they're doing. Now, of course, your policy is making it easy and legitimate for everybody to do it without having to find complicated methods. And I would say that in the best of institutions, they've been trying to do this, but they were not feeling liberated. I think for such people, you have created a great space for liberating. And of course, for everybody, you've created a space to recognize the importance. The second question is to do with this flexibility, which I just alluded to some example that I gave you. And I think you made the point that the flexibility should exist. So particularly for higher education or as children come out of high school, are there any other views you have on how we should push this idea of giving freedom to the child and freedom to the faculty? The flexibility is all around, so that what is appropriate for that one child in a class is done. So the Guru Shishya Parampara of each teacher knows every child. And of course, we don't have that many teachers, but we use technology. For flexibility, what are some of the philosophical?
Well, you know, the undergraduate education today, if you really look at it with respect to science, humanities, arts, professional education, vocational education, if you just look at it, most of them, in some sense or other, is done in silos. There is not much of a crosstalk. This is one of the areas where we would like to have more of crosstalk in education, rather than in places where we don't have to have crosstalk. But this is something on which we should have, which is lacking very much. And so one of the things that we debated considerably is to how to bring a real knowledge spectrum into the undergraduate education, where the youngsters will benefit out of several developments that are taking place across the disciplines, and which will guide even the very disciplined study or the silo study they may undertake as a major or a minor, but which will have to really relate in terms of its effectiveness. If we want to improve the effectiveness of that knowledge, how the subjects which are adjacent to them, for example, physics with mathematics, or chemistry with certain other aspects, or philosophy with certain aspects of humanity, there are adjacent things. How well do we integrate this kind of a thing? So there is an integration that is suggested. The integration is the real catchword in this. But when I talk of integration, it should not be construed that I pick up physics, I pick up philosophy, I pick up geography, I pick up history, and I bring in the regular teachers of this and ask them to teach with and the student doesn't understand what is the connection between my history and my physics. So you need to have an integration which brings in the connectivity. So the interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity have their more focused meaning now. You cannot lose the words like interdisciplinarity, cross-disciplinarity, and multidisciplinarity in a vague way. You need to show that there is a relationship between physics and philosophy by which you develop the physics to a level which is much beyond what you understand by bringing in the philosophical consideration. In fact, most of the modern physics, whether you look at the work of Heisenberg or Schrodinger, their physics have been guided by philosophy. And ultimately, the philosophy is kind of critical. So how do we leverage this kind of experiences into undergraduate education? You have a foundational thing, which is a liberal education, where you try to bring in the best. The catchword is you bring in the best of the intellectual, aesthetic, social, physical, emotional, and moral in an integrated manner. So this cannot be just done by learning physics in undergraduate or learning mathematics alone. That is why you need to cut across the fields. Arts, humanities, languages, sciences, social sciences, professional, technical, vocational, they have to all find some way or other place in the undergraduate education in a holistic approach to learning system. And then you go the other aspects of social, ethical aspects of engagement and things of that kind. There is the second part of it. Therefore, a holistic education shall be in the long term the approach to all the undergraduate. We have recommended that all the undergraduate program, whether it is related to sciences, whether it is humanities, whether it is arts, whether it is professional or vocational, have to find an integration at the undergraduate level where you get the best of the knowledge and then also understand the connectivity of the knowledge with the area in which you want to pursue your profession. So this is the most, this thing, we have made a very strong plea for this. And I think the government has appreciated the fact that you may not call them as a liberal education, but it is certainly a liberal arts education, and it will be connected with all the subjects across the disciplines and thereby create a holistic approach. And the holistic approach create a well-rounded person. Well-rounded person is the one that you are able to do not only the work which is related to your area, but you have the ability to originality, ability to communicate, the skills to communicate, the ability to create, be innovative, ability to see new ideas and out-of-box thinking. There are things which naturally come out because you have learned more than one subject in this. And this is precisely what we are recommended. We think this is a very major change. The other part of it is because there are going to be multiplicity of disciplines, multiplicity of institutions are likely to be there. NIIT will certainly see whether there's a very good institution around who can also partner with it and to create this holistic approach. So there is a need for what you call as an ABC credit system. I don't want to go into the details of that. You try to carry forward the credits that you get in one course or in one area and to go to another area. And you do that area not necessarily in the same institution. You can do it in another institution, another university and things of that kind. But there is a provision for carrying forward the MBA credit. You can do it at any point you want, any time you want, any place you want, any subject you want. And so there is a tremendous, you wanted about the flexibility part of it. The youngster today is not going to be faced with the idea that if he loses his educational opportunity, that age of the so-called age in which undergraduation takes place or the graduation takes place, if 10 years later he suddenly wakes up, no, I should learn a little bit more philosophy because I think that comes into my present profession. He will go and 6 months, learn a quick philosophy, get a credit out of that, and then come back to the profession. This provision exists in the profession. So there is a tremendous flexibility across the discipline, across the institution, across the universities, and there is also no distinction between private and public. I also want to emphasize this aspect of it. It is not that only the public funded institution will engage themselves, the private will try to do something. There is no, we have not made any, one of the important things we thought is we should allow the free flow of interaction between private and public system because it contains the underlying importance of education. It's not because of any other reason. And I am sure institutions like yours will certainly have their role, obviously, because you bubble with ideas, but where do you let loose? So here we are giving you the chance.
So anyway, I think everybody on this session should know something very interesting. It just triggered my mind, Dr. Rangan, as you mentioned. I want everyone to know that he's a chancellor, not just of a private university called NIT University, but also of the Central University of Rajasthan. I don't know if many people know. So you talked about this private and public together. But I do want to mention one thing, Dr. Kasuran, which when you next visit, will show you in detail.
Okay.
For the last now, out of about 10 years plus, the last about six and a half or 7 years, I would say, we have a team led by Dr. Vijay Manke, who is doing something which goes beyond what people describe as holistic or multidisciplinary. So now, and about a fifth of our teachers are trained in that method. So what is that? So every year they'll announce some courses by this method, which are taught across all the years, first, second, third, fourth year. So the batch who takes this is across. There will be a real user of it. So it may be a company or an NGO or someone who's trying to solve a problem or a startup who's building a product. So this whole group of students work as a team with divided responsibility, where someone is responsible for communication, someone for marketing, someone for the technology, someone for math, someone for physics. So they define the requirement, they allocate the work, and the students take these responsibilities. Senior ones are also supervisors and managers in this process. And depending on their interest and capability, they work collectively to solve a real problem during a semester for an outside real consumer. So what this does is, when they have to go back and say, okay, there's a maths now involved here, someone in the first year or second year doing a maths course, they have to figure out how to solve that part of the issue. Then they say, oh, no, but there's a biology question here as well. Or there's a question on the environment. What will be the environment impact? So this cohort reorganizes and self-organizes. And most of the self-organization is done by students who are managing this. And this is remarkable. In fact, we are perfecting this, and this will probably become the dominant method, because, as you know, we don't have departments in NU. We only have areas. We don't have buildings for maths and physics, and there's no building allocated. So everything is holistic and complete. But this method, which is now taking students of fourth year, third, second, first in one cohort of a batch for that particular course, is perhaps, in our view, the way of things to go. So we're trying to look at flexibility from that point of view. Third and last question, and I know I'm taking more time than you had promised, but I'll take 5 more minutes, Dr. Kasurangan, if you have.
Okay.
Is on the role of technology. And a lot has been written. Dr. Manke did talk in length about her observations on the NEP, talking about technology. So rather than the detail, a few words from you on the role of technology in learning as NEP envisages.
Okay, there are two things I just want to emphasize here. One is the use of technology itself, and all of you are very well aware of what we are. Actually, within the policy itself, we have very clearly identified, for example, the one which results in improving teaching, learning. And first of all, I want to say the technology and education are bidirectional. So technology influences education, education influences technology. So there is a bidirectionality. Within this bidirectionality, the question of using the technology, one is, of course, teaching, learning, and evaluation. Why I say this, and this is obviously very much evident also in the work which is related to our, what many institutions did on online education in synchronous mode or in a synchronous mode and things of that kind, blending approach, high quality, pre-recorded content, rapid feedback with automated smart evaluation, which affects the teachers. These are kind of things on which I think they'll consider, and I'm aware of the kind of things you have taken in the pioneering steps within the institution. So some of these. The second one, of course, is teacher preparation and continuous teacher professional advancement. Something, again, technology is proving to be a very effective means of bringing in a certain level of teacher preparation. Enhancing educational access to disadvantage. This is going to be one of the key elements. You need a digital divide to be addressed and many other aspects of it. But I think nevertheless, technology has a very critical role in this. Therefore, the policy has made sure that it is highlighted. And lastly, of course, the one that is very often used nowadays, streamlining education planning, administration, and management. And here the National Repository of Educational Data, which we want to create now, is primarily to make sure that we have a fairly good information system. In fact, even while writing this policy, I want to tell you, Raji, a good policy will be based on good amount of information and data. And we had to really struggle to get that kind of an authenticity to our policy, which is based on several aspects of data and information. We need to strengthen this system. This is because institutions like yours certainly have a role to play in strengthening this kind of this thing. On the other side, I want to only conclude it by telling we have created what is called as a National Educational Technology Forum, NTAF. It's a consultative body. It's not an institution. It's a consultative body. It's a network of activities within different institutions. They come they do 2 or 3 important things with respect to how do you want. One is they provide an independent evidence-based advice to central and state governments. What is good in a technology, what is not so good in technology, because when multiplicity of options are given to you, the user is going to get confused. There should be a direction for them. So that is one of the things. Second is we want to create and build intellectual and institutional capacities in educational technology. In fact, your vision in a sense jives with this aspect of whether we should have this kind of a research and directions for this. The third element is a strategic thrust areas in the domain. We need to identify them. India should not wake up because somebody has done it 5 years, they've got an experience. We have to be alert on this. So because education is going to be central to this. So that's the third. And lastly, articulate new directions for research and innovation. We have a National Research Foundation, which is going to come into picture. They will drive a research activity. And so institutions will undertake research and innovation in the area of educational technology. These are 4 elements of the National Education Technology Forum, but most of it will be based on consultative processes between the stakeholders. And it could be a very important and timely input for the decision makers, whether it is at the institutional level, state level, or at the government level. That's it.
That's wonderful. And in fact, this session itself, we've titled it Innovations in Digital Learning, the NEP Perspective. So I was telling all our participants that we just thought it important that the first conversation on this we do with schools in our state of Rajasthan, and that we invite you. They have the privilege of listening. While we will do this with other states, we will not have, I don't want to burden you. I know how much you have on your plate, but we do want to now engage with schools, because the question, the point that you raised is how do we equip all the feeder institutions to benefit from what we are experimenting, what we are learning, what we are trying to do. So you may recall, Dr. Angan, we had spoken to the education minister in Rajasthan, and we had said when the COVID happened, I said, NU is willing to give us the freedom to experiment with online learning, and whatever we learn, we'll give it to your universities. So we are keen to open this up to Rajasthan, and I'm hoping that the participants we have today, we have a good number of participants from very good schools, that Dr. Mrs. Mandke and the team at NU will find ways to engage with them and share whatever we are learning. Because at least one thing that COVID has done is that we can get people to assemble very quickly, and the platforms are getting into good shape. So I think we are very keen as an institution to share whatever we are learning. And the teachers from the schools whose principals are with us or senior teachers are with us, I just want to let them know that we will want to communicate with them. Then we do have many of your recordings, Dr. Kasurangan, so we are going to play them out to people when they have questions. That's what the university folks are thinking of, so that we don't, whatever you said a few times, you don't want to take your time for that again and again. But we will also watch very carefully the schools which are doing pioneering work and perhaps report that back to you, because I'm sure you're keen to see what impact is the policy having. So we take that responsibility to keep studying that and to feed you back. Like you've told me very often that give me examples of what NU has done, because that strengthens the logic for many ideas in the policy. So many of the schools are doing great work, and we will use this medium of communication where Dr. Mrs. Mandke, Vijay Mandke, and the others will engage with teachers, two-way engagement, because we have been running a PhD program, a master's program in educational technology for years now. So we will take this responsibility to gather this and then feed it back to you so that you get a feedback loop. And you talked about data and evidence-based policy making. So thank you so very much. I'm delighted you could find the time. And I just want everybody to know that he is such an inspiration that when I see him working in the way he works, I feel that I'm so slow. I have to catch up with him. But that will remain a lifelong aspiration. Thank you so much, Dr. Rangan.
Thank you, Raji. All the best for all your
Thank
motivation. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Monisha, back to you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Kasturi Rangan. Thank you, Mr. Pawar. It was very, very enriching to hear both of you speak. And, just in the interest of time, I will now give the last set of questions to our panelists. And I'm requesting them to keep their answers brief. We have a lot of questions that actually, in fact, have been covered in the conversation that we've been having, but I still have just one last question for all of you here. My request, please keep your answers brief, and so that we can cover as much as we can going ahead. Now, we've been hearing a lot of things here related to teacher competencies. In fact, General Kulkarni, I've been getting a lot of questions as we were having this conversation on teacher competencies. Teachers want to know that what is it that they need to do to be able to develop students' creativity. How do they ensure that they talk about innovative methods, and what are the kind of challenges that teachers would face? If you could help us understand that.
The challenge for the teacher is not the learning of technology. The challenge for the teacher is to be able to shed old habits. And habit forming, as you know, is a very long-standing disease. We make a habit fast, and we can't get rid of it quick enough. So because they were taught in a certain way, because they learned in a certain way, and because till recently they taught in a certain way, it is very difficult for the teacher to shed that. And the crux of the problem is that the classroom is about the teacher, not about the student. Just like when I am speaking, you have a thing called a speaker view, and you can put me up and the rest of the audience can vanish. The same thing happens inside a classroom. The focus is on the teacher. You have 30, 40, 60, depending on your class, staring away at the teacher and the board behind the teacher. So therefore, the first step is the teacher must accept that today technology has made content delivery irrelevant. The manner of content delivery has also become irrelevant to the skill of a teacher. So the moment you take the content delivery portion out of the teacher's lesson plan, you free up anything between 40 to 60% of the time. Now, when you free up this 40 to 60% of the time, now the teacher has an opportunity to do what Dr. Kasturi Rangan and others have been saying about collaborating, communicating with each other, questioning, and everyone talks of critical thinking. The simplest part of it is the thing called why. The moment a student is allowed to ask why, you are opening up the doors to his learning or her learning. But the moment you say, this is how it is, this is the final truth, then no child is going to learn. Now you tell me, what is the impediment from a teacher's point of view? The senior teachers tell us that, sir, the board exam is structured in a certain way. I need to prepare my students to be ready for the exam. So we are paying a lot of attention to the approach to learning with new pedagogical approaches, technological approaches. So the approach to learning is changing, I accept, but the approach to assessment is not responding. So what happens in the last 2 years in school, everything else gets shut down and you get into this narrow funnel of trying to get in, do well in the exam with the sole purpose of getting into college. The last 2 years of school education are completely wasted. So whereas the foundation and in good schools till about class 8 or 9, you do wonders with the child, and thereafter you kind of let him down or her down by saying, okay, forget everything, let's talk about the board exam. And then the parents have the similar view. Because of course, getting into college is important. Because the criteria for getting into college, and I'm sorry to say this is to do with the not only with the exam system of class 12, but with the entrance system of university. And I appeal to private universities like NU to kindly make a review of this. I've had many conversations with Dr. Manke, ma'am, your husband, in my campus as well. And I've had with other private universities that unless you alter your entrance system, my kids have no choice but to do more of the same. The other major challenge for teachers is the autonomy that they have within their school, from their school leadership. If there are two teachers taking neighboring sections of the same class with the same learning outcome, same module, concept, whatever you call it, their lesson plans mustn't look alike. But I know certain groups of schools which take great pride that we have 40 schools all over the country. On any day, go anywhere in lesson 3, in section 7E, you will find the same thing being taught. Then you may just go entirely online. You don't need a bunch of teachers all over. And the last thing is that this narrow vertical silo in which teachers choose to keep themselves. Because when you select teachers, you select them on that narrow silo. You advertise for a chemistry teacher, you advertise for a history teacher, and you select on the basis of competence in that subject. And when the teacher comes in, you say, no, I want you to be interdisciplinary. You must be comfortable with team teaching. Don't live within narrow walls. If the enabling ecosystems are not sorted out, I am afraid we will have good ideas, good thoughts, and poor delivery. And I can say with some degree of conviction that where it has been tried out, and I'm happy to share our experiences, that where it has been tried out, results are slow in coming, but they are coming. So I am an optimist, but the enabling ecosystem must get cracking fast. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General Kulkarni. And Mr. Datta, I have, again, a lot of questions coming to us, of course, from teachers, classes, how to make an online class more interesting, more lively, to continue to be engaged with the students. Your quick closing comments on that, sir.
Okay. First is teachers will have to take into account the attention span. Now, I'm told that that is something that has been measured very scientifically and it has been falling drastically. So students' attention is one thing that a teacher would have to keep in mind. Stimulus variation is something that we provide in a normal classroom also. There were the good old teaching tactics where you were training a teacher, you told them that after a few minutes or while giving a concept after having delivered that, take a break, do some small talk and then come back to your topic because the student would lose attention. Now with the kind of stimulus that we get through the gadgets, it is very, very difficult to hold a kid's attention. So teaching will have to become the onus is on the teacher. The teaching will have to compete with what a kid has an option of seeing. You might just minimize your screen and go to an animation. You may start scrolling, you may start playing a game. So teachers will have to gamify their lessons. Now, when you gamify, you do two things. A, you make it interesting, you make it interactive. At the same time, it is as per the needs of for the need assessment as to how you are yourself teaching. Your own teaching gets assessed because by way of results, as each student answers, you get to know, you keep them there. They cannot just switch off the camera and wander away because they know that a question is coming at the end of this module. And you can make it more of a teamwork where all of them have to depend on each other for the final result to come out. So if you can achieve this by the use of A, static media, B, by use of videos, and as we have been talking about AI, augmented learning, your AR, your VR, just bring everything in and at the same time bring in things that are happening live on the net. Your classrooms are going to become more responsive, more alive, better resourced, and more relevant to the kid. And if you can keep them, because you will, as General Kulkarni also said, that you put them into silos because the teacher says, I have to prepare them for an examination, which is of a certain pattern. So kids have to master that and crack it. So that compulsion will always stay with you in the higher classes. But then in the lower classes, if we can more, where you have more freedom for building your curriculum, if you can bring in the blended learning and all these online options that are available, I think some bit of this can also be further carried into classes 9th onwards. And where these tools are not distractions, but actually they contribute and enhance the learning for your board exams or whatever is your constraints are. So I guess the teacher's onus is how to make it more two-way, how to bring in the latest that is available, not only in the terms of content, but also the technology, and keep their attention glued, because you are competing with very, very interesting modes of teaching available on the net.
Thank you so much, Mr. Datta. Thank you so much. Parimal ma'am, as head of institution, your closing comments on some of the innovations that you want to talk about, which we've implemented at NU. I know we've spoken about quite a few as we've gone along, but kindly help summarize those for us.
Thank you, Monisha. I'll be very brief. As Mr. Pawar mentioned right in his opening comments, that technology-based education has been one of our 4 core principles. So our response to building the capability in digital learning is not a knee-jerk reaction to pandemic, but for the past more than 10 years, we have been building the sound capability for digital learning. In fact, for the past 7 years, and General Kulkarni mentioned really a genuine issue of reskilling or training the teachers. So we have been doing that for the past 7 years. We have a monthly workshop for faculty in which technology-enabled teaching learning has been a dominant theme all through. Nonetheless, the pandemic certainly intensified the pace of innovation. And today what we have, the digital learning platform, we call Nugget. And Nugget has the features, a very comprehensive, as envisaged by new education policy also. I would like to just talk about 2-3 things, how we did, because your question was, what innovation we did? You said your question is how, and I think that makes more sense, more relevant. I would like to say the first thing, that we involved all stakeholders in designing the platform, which is not only the faculty, students, but actually we are involving the industry as well and taking very important, valuable inputs from them and learning from them. So it is a co-created by all stakeholders. And the 3 principles on which we have designed and we have been implementing Nugget is, the first and foremost is the student experience. Because all that matters is how is student experience when student is sitting away at his residence and is only from morning till late afternoon on the digital platform. His experience must be very refreshing, pleasing, learning. So learning effectiveness is the second principle that we are addressed. And the third is the comprehensiveness. Now the fact that we are a residential campus and for the past 1 year operating in a virtual mode, this Nugget has tried to replicate campus environment virtually, which means students are working in group projects, students are running their clubs, whether it is music club, Kavishala club, or a Nukkad Natak club. They put up a Nukkad Natak on 26 January, everything virtual. So it is a replicating the campus environment in a virtual form. That has been our third central principle. Having done this, the continuous student feedback, faculty feedback, and in fact, I will add many of our alumni have been contributing And one of them, if he is in the audience, I would like him to speak a few words. And as soon as I complete in next 1 minute what I have to say, I would like to also add that we have thrown open our nugget to prospective students to have the taste of the pudding. If they decide to join, how they are going to learn. We did this last year itself. Continuous feedback from alumni, prospective students, uh, current existing students, faculty on a weekly basis. And therefore, we have been in the experience of continuous incremental innovation on a week-to-week basis. We are monitoring, we are improving, and I think that's the only process. It is quite painstaking, but I think it pays rich dividends, and we are very proud to really showcase our platform, which we have rightly named Nugget. And in fact, Mr. Pawar mentioned that when he saw the play by the engineering student, then came the idea of activity-oriented course. In fact, I think the student who is in our audience, it was his first play, a full 3-hour English play in a professional manner. And I acknowledge that our alum now, that triggered the idea of activity-oriented course. So Monisha, I think I could go on, but it has been very exciting, this path of innovation, continuous incremental improvement.
Thank you, ma'am.
Involving all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Over to you.
Thank you so much. Rajat, I know we're absolutely short of time, but I will definitely give you like 30 seconds to make your comments on this. You are one of our alumni, and we'd love to hear a little bit in continuation to what Parimal ma'am was saying.
Sure. So probably I'll just take an example right now. My parents enrolled me with the university because of the two core principles that we had, where one was industry linked and the other was technology driven. And I saw that come to life in my 4 years of my BTech when I was at NU. So at that point in time, we built and launched a product into the US market, and we built it with someone who was sitting in the US. We had never met physically, and we were only interacting over calls and were connected through technology. Later, when I joined PwC, when I came to my professional life and this pandemic happened, it was a huge switch for everyone to lose that physical connect with the clients and connect virtually. So people were learning, evolving, adapting. But to add to my confidence, we had already done that in the beginning. In while we were in the university, we had launched and built a product. So it really became very easy for me to interact with my clients, understand the requirements, and deliver top-notch quality. So because we did the same thing, we replicated the same model that we had done in the university. So I think that forward-looking approach helped me a lot. So I think that's how I put it together.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. You're actually the proof of the pudding, and we're so honored to have you here with us today, Rajat. Thanks for your time. And I know we're just getting short of time, and we're almost at the end. But one final question to you, General A.K. Singh. As again, as a residential university, how are we preparing for the new normal? Because a lot of school teachers, school principals also had that question, and the whole uncertainty or the fear or the doubt in everybody's mind. So as a fully residential university, how have you prepared for the new normal, and is it impacting the students' lives in any case? Just quick closing comments from you, sir.
Right, Monisha. The challenge of new normal has been met through a systematic and gradual process. In that, we studied the problems encountered by most of the institutions who opened up during the pandemic, some in India and mostly abroad. Through that, we formulated a guideline and a SOP that was followed by an interactive session with all parents in small groups to seek their views and inputs. And thereafter, we are modified and updated our SOP. Based on all this, we have created our facilities right from the entry till student takes his food in the mess and goes to sleep in a manner that all residents on the campus remain safe. That is our primary concern. The protocols pertaining to quarantine, testing, infection management, and various activities in which students will take part, not to feel as if they are in a solitary confinement. I do not want to elaborate much on this, just by saying that today is 352nd day when the campus has remained COVID-free since the time we closed. We have tested more than 270 faculty, staff, and support staff, and all are negative. We intend remaining in the same mode in all times to come. As a test of the pudding, you said, I have another student, Soumya Gupta, who has recently joined the campus on 7th of February. We would like to listen to her experience about what it is after she has come to the campus.
Hey everyone. So I'm Soumya Gupta and I'm a third year student of biotechnology. So I joined campus on 7th of February, but before talking about it, let's talk about how it was when we left. So as Rajat Bhaiya said, we all believe in thinking in advance. Even before the government took drastic measures to put a lockdown, and you had taken the necessary steps to stop the spread in and around the campus, let's say the plan of what to do now had already been formulated right in March, when we couldn't even think about that government will put a lockdown. So when I came back on campus, of course, being stuck in a situation is a whole different thing, and adapting to is a whole different. And you took that adapting to a whole different level, like introduction of nugget, project-based learning, online events happening, and everything happening simultaneously. It was a welcome experience of going into online learning and experiencing virtual labs was a completely different experience. And then when the government issued orders for the campus reopening as well, and you did not join the herd race, they took their own sweet time and in figuring out things and creating a safe space for the students. When we joined back, we saw some welcome changes, like foot operated tabs, the distancing, the mask on every time. And though it was a little uncomfortable at first, but then we understood that it was just for our safety, for everyone else's safety on the campus. And as to answer if you're facing any issues and everything, no, we are not. We genuinely are not, because this is the new normal, and this is what we have been taught right from the first year, that you need to adapt. Because the university, the faculty is promoting this, and they are doing the same thing as well. Not just us, it is not being forced on us, it is not being forced on anyone. It is being done for us and for the safety of everyone around us. So if we want to enjoy the university, these are some of the mandatory things we are going to do. And the new normal, as we say, is a whole different, it's a bit enjoyable, as I'd like to say. It's a bit enjoyable.
Thank you so much, Soumya. I think it is so encouraging to hear you speak, and that's what I'm telling the audience, that the next time we will ensure that we have this audience hosted in person at the NU campus. But thank you for your experience. I'm sure the teachers have noted down all the level of excitement that students truly have when they come back to campus, whether it is schools or whether it's a university. So with this, we are drawing to an end above the time limit that we'd set in, but it was indeed a very, very engaging and an educating conversation, and a lot of thoughts that were exchanged, and I hope all your questions were answered. But now that we are at the last leg, the toughest job, and I'm calling Mr. Vijay Thadani, who's co-founder NIIT University and Vice Chairman and Managing Director NIIT Limited, for the toughest job of helping us summarize the takeaways of this discussion with his closing comments. Over to you, sir.
So thank you, Monisha. First of all, you said it is the toughest job. You made it very simple because we are well above time. And therefore, I will have to use a very few points to summarize what I want to say. So first of all, I do want to thank General Kulkarni, Mr. Datta, Professor Mandke, AK, Nice to see you, Rajat, one more time. Great to see you in action. And Soumya, looking forward to meet you at the campus one of these days. So, and then of course we had the benefit of Mr. Pawar and Dr. Kasturi Rangan. I think it was a session which was filled with lots of details. And in fact, I have 4 pages of notes. If I go through those, it will be equivalent to another 1 hour of session. And I don't think anybody would like to use that, because there is a connect between the stomach and the brain, and the brain stops functioning at a certain point of time. So I'll keep it extremely brief. I think the two, the one interesting thing as I was watching was, I was trying to say what came first, NEP or COVID? Because in many ways, it looks like NEP anticipated that something like COVID, and I think Mr. Datta also mentioned that it was as if we were preparing for a pandemic. Yeah. Now, there are many conspiracy theories, so I will not venture into one more on that. But it's really very interesting. And it's actually very fortunate if you look at it. Because every time a policy comes in, a policy has its interpretations, and we have long dialogues. And before the policy sees the light of the day in practice, from all the flexibility and autonomy which was originally planned, right, it gets petered down to something for good reasons, I guess, just to make sure that the lowest common multiple benefits. In this case, the policy and this pandemic actually have come together at a very, very interesting time, because it has opened the doors for us to practice the policy. And I think Dr. Kasturi Rangan, in fact, said it in more words than one, that autonomy is the central piece. Autonomy is the central piece. Flexibility is the other leg, and holistic education is the third. Now he says, the lab is open to you, try it out, share experiences, enrich yourself. I think this is a license to implement policy that COVID has given us. And we should use this opportunity. It was really very heartening to hear Mr. Datta talk about collaborative education. Now, collaborative education in school time, when it was a one-to-many model, it was listen, cram, come, and let it out on paper. Of course, schools, progressive schools such as yours, would have gone much beyond that and were using technology. Or for that matter, General Kulkarni is saying, fine, digital learning is, yeah, we understand, but that doesn't mean that's a be all and end all. And what a beautiful way of saying blended is the way forward. Why? Because a light bulb, for example, can't be changed using digital, right? Digital can maybe tell you how to change the light bulb, but you will have to go up and change that light bulb. So I think there are features of this which many of us had incorporated, but many of us were constrained. What the pandemic has done is it's given us a license. It has given us a license to challenge the current system, use technology, and I think in universities experience, and again, we feel fortunate. We feel as if these 4 core principles were designed for these times. To be technology based, to be industry linked, which is getting linked to the next stage of learning or practice, whatever that might be, to be research oriented, bring curiosity. General Kulkarni talked about asking why every now and then. And by the way, that's something that we look forward to in the university. And finally, making it seamless. Making sure that the silos between departments, silos between subjects, all these get removed. Now, there is a larger seamlessness within which we have these dialogues. And today's backdrop, the national education policy backdrop, was actually to discover that in the new normal, whatever that new normal will be, it certainly will not be anywhere close to the old normal. It will have the best features of what we have learned all this while, but it will also have some of the best features that we have learned in last 1 year. And I think putting those together, co-creating the new way of learning, I think is an opportunity that each one of us have. There are students who are struggling with it in the school. Schools are struggling with the students and students vice versa. And then, of course, there is a larger fear, and I wanted to assure General Kulkarni, if there is one university which is going to give it a try to make sure that your students don't get burdened by exams, you could try NIT University. I think many of the students we have here, they took what is known as early admission program. The early admission program enables you to actually free yourself up by having a college admission with you when you go, before you get ready for, what I call the exam of your life, the class 12 exam. And then the exam of your life does not become as important or as relevant. Of course, it is always relevant, but it's important that that exam of life can now be prepared with in-depth understanding of the subject as well. So many of these things and more are subjects that we would continuously like to debate and discuss and co-create with the school. The reason we built these programs was so that we build a seamless movement of the student or transition from the student to school to college life. And the way we used to do that was to get students to the campus. Monisha mentioned more than once that next time we would like to see you there. Now, I don't know when that next time will be, but definitely on a digital platform, we can continue to work together. And as and when opportunities exist, we would like to get you there. While I'm at this, I must also say that it goes beyond just dialogues of this kind or just a visit to the university. NU is very, very committed to the state of Rajasthan, of course, and to the cause of education and underlying technology. But definitely Rajasthan is the starting point for us because it's our home state. And we would very much like to offer to all the schools that are present today that if they are interested, we are doing some workshops now in the universities just for school teachers so that they can come and learn something new or join us on a digital platform as they feel convenient on artificial intelligence and machine learning, which will also become a part of the curriculum. So the first such workshop is planned, I think, in next few days, but then there are many others that are there, and please feel free. So I do want to say that definitely the role of the teacher from being a sage on stage to a guide on side is become a reality. The role of technology, I think, and how it can mold into education has become a reality. The national education policy gives us an opportunity for seamless learning. I think we have a great opportunity ahead of us. Let's put our heads together. We look forward to welcoming you at the campus, on a platform, or another environment. So I wish you all the best. I just want to make sure that we don't extend it beyond that. Otherwise, we could talk forever. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Mr. Thadani. Thank you.
Thank you so very much to each of our speakers. Bigger thanks to the audience. I hope we were able to take all your questions, and we look forward to seeing you on campus. Thank you so much. Have a great day.